It's time now for us to take a look back at this week's headline-making stories and in our Reporters Rewind. Our guests at the round table are Shana Renee, who is a sports blogger, along with freelance journalist Nicholas Niarchos. And lastly, but not leastly, Nene Ekwa-Brew-Hammond. She's a style and culture writer whose work has appeared in Ebony, Parenting, and Jet magazines. Welcome to all of you.
Thank you.
Good to see you. Okay, so what would the end of the week be if we didn't talk about the ongoing scandal in the NFL? Of course, Commissioner Roger Goodell just had a press conference. Doesn't seem like he said anything new. I think I want to start here, and why don't I start with you, Nene? Is it time to change the conversation, the nature of this conversation?
I think that's a difficult question. I think it's good that we're having a conversation about this in the first place. We need to be talking about domestic violence. We need to be talking about the fact that these athletes are role models and they do need to be held to that, higher standard. But at the same time, I think it's hard because I think so far all we're seeing is theater. All we're seeing is, people reacting to, video and reacting to images, and we don't really know all of the facts as they're coming out. And the NFL and Roger Goodell's press conference today just seemed to be, just sort of a reactionary statement just to placate. And I want some more substantive conversation about what's happening.
And that's what I'm referring to. I mean, we talk a lot about the NFL, a lot about Roger Goodell, a lot about Adrian Peterson, but what about the issue and those who suffer in this issue?
I agree, and I think that, unfortunately, like you said, there wasn't much substance to Roger Goodell's press conference today. It's been almost 10 days since we heard from him last, and he didn't really address what they're actionable items in terms of what they're doing. Yes, they met with a bunch of people. Yes, they're, setting up new conduct committees, and it seems like there's going to be committees for committees. But, are you going to standardize a disciplinary system across the board? Because as we saw this week with, the Adrian Peterson situation, he was deactivated, then reinstated, and then deactivated again. And across the board, where there's different charges, there doesn't seem to be any standardized discipline. And I think that that's what a lot of people are reacting to. And I think that it's more or less showing how unequipped or inequipped the NFL is in terms of handling these huge scandals that have just kind of snowballed and blown up.
Yeah, Nicholas, where's the nut of this issue for you?
What I think the issue is that you need to look at a wider cultural shift in sports. In my own country, in England, Greece as well.
Are you really?
Well,
you sound like you're from Alabama.
Well,
no, go ahead.
I grew up in England, but I'm Greek. But no, there are the same problems. I think there's this kind of cultural issue in sports, which means that athletics and athletic teams create this sort of situation in which these sort of actions, these sort of issues are sort of repressed, and I think you see it even at a college level. The New York Times did a wonderful piece a couple of months ago on Jameis Winston, the Florida football player, college football player, who's accused of all kinds of sort of really, really nasty things. And you have to understand that when something like that is happening in somebody's education, when somebody's allowed, when something is allowed like that, and people see, role models, they see stars like Jameis Winston getting away with these allegations, these things not being investigated, then it's going to happen at a higher level. It's going to happen at the NFL level as well.
It's important to point out with Jameis Winston is that there are allegations but no charges, and so we have to be fair to say that. But I guess, is anybody just sort of scratching your head over how tone deaf the NFL seems to be on this?
I mean, that's been the criticism, and National Organization of Women is still calling for Goodell's resignation even after today's press conference, because I think that, as women, we make up 45% of the NFL fan base, and yet every action and reaction that they've shown so far has just been very much diminishing what we contribute to the NFL and diminishing women's rights and saying that it really doesn't matter. And I think that, that's what the sponsors are reacting to. That's why these women organizations and advocacy groups are really, using this opportunity to make using this opportunity to really say like, hey, we matter, and this issue has been suppressed for too long. So now I think that it is the right opportunity for them to really kind of make the best of it and say, you're not just going to silence us like we've been silenced in the past.
But I think one of the magic words that you said, and tell me if you agree with me, Nene, is sponsors. If the NFL does not lose money, then Roger Goodell is going to be just fine.
Yeah, I think, I mean, again, I think we're seeing theater here. We're seeing, people reacting, and then the sponsors react, and then the NFL reacts, and it's that chain reaction. But I think that I'm not surprised by the tone deafness, because I think culturally there is a tone deafness. I mean, we know, we've heard all the stats. 1 in 3 women that are murdered by an abuser. I mean, and these things, this is what's happening in every pocket of, the country. And I mean, so I think that tone deafness is just a reflection of, it's a microcosm of the macrocosm, and we've got to do
All right, I'm going to put you to, and we need to turn to our next subject, but I'm going to put the 2 ladies at the table on the spot. Are you football fans, first of all?
I am.
You are?
No.
Yes.
Are you gonna watch NFL football this season?
And it's something that I've been very conflicted with, and I've had to do some personal soul searching to just kind of reconcile my personal feelings with how I think that the NFL has handled the situation and the statement and message that they sent to women. And so personally, I'm going to use my platform to speak to young girls about domestic violence. So I am, trying to reconcile my issues. But
it is a conflict, because I'm a football fan as well. Yeah, so you sort of want to do the right thing.
Right.
But oh my Lord. Okay, let's change subjects just for the last couple of minutes that we have.
I'm a football fan, but that means a different thing.
I'm sorry, I didn't need to leave you out of that question. But the female fans of football has really risen dramatically over the last decade or so. All right, so turning to then this threat of ISIS, and as we know, President Barack Obama has set forth this proposal that Congress approved with an anti-ISIS plan to support the Syrian rebels, of course, continue the airstrikes, and to even arm the rebels. So my question here is, I'll start with you, Nicholas, since I left you out of that last question. Should the U.S. be leading the way with the coalition to fight ISIS if ISIS is a global threat?
Well, is ISIS a global threat? I mean, it's a very localized issue. At the moment, you have many people coming from different countries in the world fighting solely in Iraq and Syria. The question is, will it spread? I don't know whether it is going to actually spread into Europe or the United States, but I think it's, you can read it as a broader Sunni-Shia conflict in the Middle East. Should the U.S. be a part of that is really something that we have to be asking. And should we have troops, or should the U.S. have troops on the ground? And should Britain, France, and all these other countries from where these jihadis are coming from? The question is there a force on the ground that can actually beat ISIS? And I think at the moment, the answer to that is no. Who are the Free Syrian Army? The Free Syrian Army are a group of
they're ragtag rebels, and they seem to flow freely between ISIS and other Al-Qaeda-linked organizations. I'm going to cut you off because we're running out of time. Excuse me for doing that. But Shana, what's your thought on that? Should the U.S. be leading the way, because it complicates a lot of things in that region?
I don't necessarily know if the U.S. should be leading the way, but I do recognize that we do have the strongest military force, and so if we're going to be involved, then you do want, to make sure that you have the strongest strategy and people there that can execute. I think it's a very complicated issue, but I can understand why we do at least have some involvement in it.
All right, Nene, the last word.
My opinion is I don't think that the U.S. should be leading per se. I think that it's wise for Obama to build a coalition because, there's so much happening in this world right now. The world is blowing up. And I think if we take the lead on every position, we're just going to be weaker for it.
All right, we'll have to leave it right there. Shana Renee, Nicholas Niarchos, Nene Ekwabru-Hammond. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Appreciate you coming in. And you're watching Arise America.